Hi folks, Dave with dbstechtalk, and today we are going to do something totally different. We're going to talk about something that I've never talked about on this channel before, and that is speakers. Now I have reviewed two Bluetooth speakers but no comparison to what we're going to talk about today. Today we are going to talk about the Kanto Yumi. Now the Kanto Yumi is no longer available. There are several other Kanto models. From what I understand, the YU6 is the closest to what you can get with the Kanto Yumi that I'm going to be reviewing today. And I haven't heard any other speaker. This is the only speaker that I have heard in my house. And I've heard speakers elsewhere, Auxpona, audio shows, audio meets, friends' houses, church, things like that, but I have never heard another speaker in my house. The only other speakers I've heard, as I said, are a DOS, D-O-S-S, Bluetooth speaker, and a Bose SoundLink Bluetooth speaker, and Soundbars. Out in the living room, we have a Klipsch soundbar with a subwoofer. Sounds great. I do not have any issues with it other than the remote control is terrible on it. And here in the office, I have a little Thone and Vander setup that I use for gaming and just watching Netflix and whatever I watch on TV. And both of the Klipsch and the Thone Vander work great for my systems and for my usage. And I have never really had any other reason to have speakers. I've always wanted to have desktop speakers. And so when my brother-in-law said, hey, I'll sell you my Kanto Yumis because I'm upgrading. Are you interested? I was like, sure. What's the price tag? And he threw out a very reasonable $125 price tag. And so I was like, sold. And I immediately purchased them and brought them home. And I'm extremely content with them. So with all that being said, my experience is very limited with speakers. And this is not a real review. This is more of a impressions, thoughts, and just an overview of somebody who has always been headphones and IEMs. And how do speakers compare? I'm not going to go into big details and show you all of the ins and outs of the speaker. For one, they're a little hefty at about 17 pounds. And, you know, being powered, everybody knows what a powered speaker looks like. I can tell you what all it has on the back side of it. So just to start, I do have about 24 inches between both of them across my desk. And then I have them 8 inches from the back wall. So they're 8 inches from the back wall and then 24 inches across between them. And I also have about the same distance between where I sit at the desk between each ear and where the speakers are. Tried to be as well as placement as I could in my little corner setup that I have. If you have any other suggestions, let me know down below in the comments. I would greatly appreciate any help that I can learn about speakers. I am using fluid speaker stands. They are, if I remember correctly, 4 inches. And they definitely did make a difference. Once I added in the speaker stands, I noticed that I was getting a whole lot more as far as placement, soundstage, and depth. So speaker stands definitely do help. I'll put links down below for that. I'll put a link down below for the banana plugs cable that I'm using to connect the left and the right side. As far as the left side being the powered one, what is on the back side? You get 2 opticals in. You get a 3.5 millimeter in. You also get a RCA in. So it connects all kinds of various ways as far as inputs. Also has Bluetooth in. You do get a remote control, and the control powers everything from power on to mute, volume, and it does have so that you can change all of your selectors of inputs, and it has play, pause, forward, skip functionality for Bluetooth. Also it has bass and treble equalization and a reset button. So if you hit the reset button, it will take the equalization back to factory setting. And then there's about 3 to 4 steps on the bass and treble on each that you can do increments. I don't know the exact increments. I don't remember. I'm sorry. Also, the volume knob on here does work. You can use a selector to mute it, and also to change your inputs, change your volumes, that type of thing. It's a very easy system to use, very straightforward. Had no problems whatsoever connecting with any Bluetooth device. Stays connected very well. Doesn't really get a lot of interference from walls in between. It seems like it's a very strong signal, and I really do enjoy that. Doesn't do any of the special Bluetooth codecs, though. It is older, so you don't get aptX HD and LDAC and all that kind of stuff. As far as the amplification on it, from what I understand, it has a Class AB amplifier in it, and it is a very nicely well-controlled, very powerful Class AB amp. Don't know all the specs on it. I'll put a link down below if you really want to read about it from drop. As far as tonality and sound signature, when using it on the setup that I use, which is hitting that reset button and just leaving it at factory setup, I really enjoy the overall tonality of the Kanto Yumi. I find that they have a very nicely defined bass. It is slightly rolled off, so you don't get a whole lot of sub bass presence, but it does have a nice body to it, a very nice tone to it. It sounds very accurate. And as far as details, they are there. You can definitely hear the differences between instruments. You can hear the differences, and when, like in movies or games or videos, things like that, people are walking footsteps and the impacts and things like that are changing. You can definitely hear that in the bass, which is a nice thing. Also, going up into the mids, there's a slight warmth in the mids. They do have a little bit of a forwardness to them. They're very engaging, have a lot of life and energy to it, and it's a very fun sounding vocal presence, which that doesn't sound distant, doesn't sound out of place in any way. It sounds a very natural sounding vocal clarity on the Kanto Yumi. And then the treble is very well defined, extends nicely. There's not a whole lot of roll off up top. You get some nice sparkle and energy, and it's a very clean sounding treble. And in fact, if you do want to boost things every now and then, sometimes some songs need it, sometimes some tracks need it, and you push forward the treble, you can actually get it to be to the point where it's too much and it's a little too bright and can be a little fatiguing or a little piercing. So I don't normally go that far. If I do enhance anything, I will hit one time on the bass and one time on the treble, and it just kind of gives a little extra fullness to the sound, a little bit more presence to it, and a little more body to it. And I just find that that's really enjoyable also. But I try to stick to the manufacturer setting, the reset, whatever you want to call it, the basic. And I do really enjoy that sound signature. Now, what am I using as my source? I am using my Mytek Liberty as the source, coming out of it with RCA, going into RCA into the Kanto. And I find that the Mytek has a very nice, smooth, and natural tone to it as overall as a DAC. And it's just a very pleasing connection with the Kanto Yumi. I just find that it's just fun and just pleasing, engaging. And I love listening to music on my speakers. The other DAC that I used with it was the Topping E30. And I found that you could actually hear a difference between the DACs. And that's really took me by surprise, because with headphones, it can be very hard to hear the differences between DACs. You can maybe hear a little subtle here, a little subtle there. And you have to have a really revealing amplifier in order to catch that. And so normally the only times that I've heard that differences between DACs is when I'm using it with a 789. And so, and headphones obviously. And it has to be a higher end headphone, something like an Ananda. Even the HD600 to a little degree will show that. And I've also found that the Allo S4X will really reveal that. And those were like the only headphones I was able to hear differences between decks. But the Kanto Yumi, I put the topping E30 on, and it lost that little bit warm, natural tone to it, and it became a very thin and brittle sounding, like sterile, trebly sound. And I was like, did I mess with something on the remote? Did my cat step on it and mess it, or do something weird? And it hadn't. It was just the total differences between the two decks that I was hearing. And I didn't like it. It was like the topping E30 with the Kanto Yumi was very fatiguing to me. And it was very bright, brittle, very thin sounding. So I turned my speakers off and I put headphones on. And I did the same comparison on the 789 between the Mytek and the topping E30. And all of a sudden I noticed the topping E30 is a whole lot brighter. Is a whole lot more sterile sounding than the Mytek. And that's the reason why I like the Mytek, because the Mytek actually sounds natural. And so I went back to speakers. And I started listening to Kanto Yumi, started listening to music. And of course I was using the Mytek because it was more pleasing. And so I started going through my playlist. And I just started listening. And I started to look for the things that I look for in other music when I'm reviewing a headphone or an IEM. And I put Yoshi Hawakara on, or however you pronounce his last name. And I started listening to the ambient noises that he has and the soundstage that he gets playing. And I went back and I put some headphones on. I put the speakers back on. I started listening and started comparing. And the thing that stood out to me the most was that in speakers, even a little 2.0 system like this, the center image is more defined. There's you know where the middle is. You know where everything is kind of getting focused into. And then all the details, all the little things have more width, more depth to it. You can actually hear it coming in, going out at you. You're like sitting here and everything's just flowing in front of you. And you can really look into the stage. You can really see and hear and picture where everything is. Layering is very accurate with the speakers. It's like you can tell each row and how it all kind of cohesively fits together in the music. And it's a very engaging way of showing you what is sound. I guess it's kind of a way to put it. It's a really unique experience. And you don't get that with a headphone. Now you can hear things out here, you can hear things coming in, but you don't get that depth, that layering. It's more immersive and engaging in a speaker than it is in a headphone. And it's a very different type of soundstage. And to me, it really got me thinking, natural. Can a headphone sound natural? Can a speaker sound natural? Yes. And it really got me realizing that speakers do a better job of being a natural soundstage and portrayal in the depth of the stage. And it really generates where the sound begins and then goes out or comes in and finishes. And I never looked at soundstage imaging in that way until I started to compare a speaker to a headphone that does soundstage really well. Something like a Hi-Fi Min Ananda, or something like a MrSpeakers Ether C, where you can really get the depth and the layering in the headphone. But when you hear it on a speaker, it sounds like you're closer, more present. Whereas with a headphone, you kind of know that that you have the headphone, and there's a limitation to it. Whereas with a speaker, it doesn't sound like it's limited as much. It's a very unique experience that I really like. And I realize that this is just a 2.0 system. Now, I've been in situations where, you go to a movie and they have the big, huge surround sounds. Things like that. That's totally different than what I'm experiencing here. But that's also totally different than what you're experiencing with a headphone. And it makes you think about which one is truly natural, which one is, or more natural, not true natural, and which one is portraying it correctly, or is your brain playing games? Makes you contemplate. And I like that. There's a lot of times when you're reviewing a headphone or you're reviewing an IEM and they just sound like music. They just kind of sound like, it's just another headphone. It's another IEM. And speakers, to me, the Kanto Yumis have taken that aspect away. It gave me a different perspective. And it makes me think about, wow, where'd that sound come from? Wow, that came from over there. Wow, there's a lot of going on in this song. There's a lot going here and there. Instead of going, just sounds like the song. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me immersed. And not only are you hearing the vocalist, not only are you hearing the instruments, but you're getting like the whole picture. And I like that. I may have to get some other speakers to review. I have no idea what. So if you have some and you want to send them to me to try, cool. Just bear in mind, I can't do massive, huge towers. My wife would kill me. She's already told me I cannot have them out in the living room. So kind of limited to my little space. But I'm curious, has anybody else experienced what I experienced? Do speakers change your mind, especially regarding placement, imaging, soundstage, depth, and layering? And what do you think I should review when it comes to speakers? Now, this is not going to be something all the time, obviously, because speakers tend to be a little bit more expensive and take up a whole lot more room. But what would you like me to review when it comes to speakers? Give some suggestions and we'll see what happens. It's been Dave with dbstechtalk. Thank you for watching. And I'll catch you in the next video.